So it's time for the part 2 video for the Marvelous Masks Recap Workshop. And where we left off before, we ended with a mountain sandwich, as I called it, which we had added a layer mask to. And because this layer mask is white, we can see the entire set of mountains. However, we don't want to see that. We want to only see part of the mountains, and we want them to gradually fade into our original background, which is this. So over here on this side, I want to see mountains, so I want white. And on this side, I don't want to see mountains. So we would technically paint in black, but there's a faster way, and that's called using the gradient tool. Right here's your gradient tool. Now, I've used these settings before, so mine's kind of already set as it should be, but yours probably won't be. So you're going to click on the gradient tool, and then you're going to reset the colors. That's these little baby squares, as I call them. So whatever colors you have here, when you press these little baby squares, it's going to reset them to the default colors. Then we have white on top and black on bottom. And then there's a little button here that can reverse those if you needed to switch them back and forth in the event you needed to do that. What we're going to do once we've set that is we're going to come up and click on this button. Now yours may look more like this right now. Just depends on your current setting. But I'm going to click on here. By the way, we also want to make sure this is set to a linear gradient. That's the first button. There's also radial where it's like a circle that goes out. We want the first button. So linear gradient. Okay, so once I click on here, what we're going to do is we need a black to white gradient. Now we can actually do a black to transparent instead of white. And that just leaves the white that's already there. So what I see here is I have a white to transparent. Well, I want a black to transparent. So to make this easy, I'm just going to flip-flop it. And so now I'm going to click here, and now I have a black to transparent as my second one. That's the one we're going to click, and you're going to press OK. Now, depending on where I start drawing, this is going to either cover up or show. We don't know, right? So it says it's going to be black to transparent. I don't have it set to reverse, so hopefully this will hide this part and then gradually bring us to the other. So to use the gradient tool, I'm going to click on the mask. It should say layer mask. And then click and drag across, about halfway. So there's what happened. So it painted in black, but gradually faded out. Now that's maybe not far enough over, so I'm going to do it again and drag a little farther over. There we go. So now the clouds kind of fade into each other up here. That looks a little bit better. So you should have something like that now. Again, making sure that we have that linear gradient. If we had the wrong gradient here, this would not look the same at all. So be careful with that. All right. So we've taken care of dragging on there, and it looks good. Now we're going to choose an adjustment layer and adjust these mountains because this side of the picture is really bright and vivid, and the mountains are kind of drab, to be honest. So we're going to use what's called a levels adjustment layer. So while I'm clicked on my mountains, I'm going to come down here to the adjustment layer icon on the layers panel. And we're going to choose a levels adjustment. Levels is kind of the one tool as far as adjustments go that I use on just about everything if I can't seem to get it to look the right contrast. So on here we have this histogram, and then we have a little black rectangle, gray, or black triangle, gray triangle, and white triangle. Not the ones at the bottom, these are output levels, but up here at the top. So if I were to pull in the black, that adjusts the shadows. Basically, it makes the darker parts darker. And if you pull in on the triangle on this side, it takes the light areas and makes the lighter areas lighter, which is kind of what we want to do here. Now, also, you can change what are called the midtones. So like where it's kind of a little bit pinkish and kind of grayish, this would pull up those. And so see how I pull those up, we can have it even prettier. So you just have to kind of choose what you like here as far as what looks good. It totally is your call. Now the problem is this is really messing up this side, right? If I put the eyeball off, look at this side over here. Now I'm going to turn it back on. See, now that side's overexposed. It's too much, okay? So what we need to do here is tell it we do not want to have that adjustment layer on this side of the mask. Because see, Levels has its own mask. So I'm going to click over here. Now, you're probably thinking, well, can I do that gradient thing again? You certainly could probably do that. I'm going to use a paintbrush, though, so I'm going to take my regular paintbrush. I'm going to make sure it's nice and soft. So I've got my hardness at 0. And then I'm going to increase my brush size by pushing my bracket over by the letter P. Now, to hide this adjustment, to make it go back to normal, to hide this adjustment, I'm going to paint in black. Black hides, right? Here we go. So now I'm painting this out. And over here now, see, we've got a big black blob that is telling it, don't do anything to this side. So now if I click back on this adjustment layer icon and bring this properties back up, if I move these, see now it's only doing it over to this side, the area that's not having to obey the adjustment layer. So white basically means obey the adjustment, and black means don't listen to the adjustment. All right, I think that looks pretty good for that one. So again, if you're following along, at this point we're on number 17. You should have a nice bright mountain over on the right, and the other side should look normal. Okay? Next instruction, we're going to turn off the visibility of the one phone layer. So we're going to turn this off for a minute. We're just going to want to look at the lower layers. And we are going to do something to this arches layer. We're going to actually make it blurry. Now you can do that lots of ways. There's a blur tool over here, which I never use. And there's a blur filter. But the blur filter, if I were to go in here, is destructive. And so like it would just do it to this layer and it would be done. It would be glued to it. So tomorrow if I wanted this part to be in focus, there wouldn't be anything I could do about it. There's no layer mask. There's no way for me to control the blur. Okay. In order for there to be a way, we have to turn this layer into what we call a smart object. So I'm going to right click this layer. And you got to right click out here in the gray space, not on the thumbnail. And I'm going to convert it to a smart object. Now down here in the corner, see this little icon tells you that it's a smart object now. Now what's cool about a smart object is if I go up to add the same filter I was just at, filter, blur, and Gaussian blur, that once I add this, it's actually going to add, kind of like it does with layer styles, it's going to add it underneath here and there will be a mask. So I'm going to pick a level of blur that I like. In my handout I use like about a 6.8, totally up to you though on that. I'm going to hit OK. Now check this out. Now we have smart filter underneath our smart object. And so I can turn this on or off, which if I had done it the other way, I wouldn't be able to turn it on or off. And for that matter, I can paint on this later on if I need to paint out if there's certain parts I don't want to have be blurry. And in this case, let's do that. Let's go ahead and take that black paintbrush and I'm going to scale it down a little bit. This doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to paint this out here so that this vehicle is basically still in focus. All right? Doesn't have to be perfect. But there you go. So we can see there's a black blob on here telling it, hey, you ignore, so black, you ignore the blur, okay? You hide from the blur and you stay in focus. And that's kind of what we're wanting to do there. So smart objects are amazing. They allow you to do non-destructive changes when you add filters. Otherwise, filters are always glued to the layer and you can't really do anything about it. And that's sad, right? Okay, next, we're going to pre-select an area and hide all but that area to create an illusion of an image inside the phone. So we're going to turn this layer back on here. Okay, we're going to drag in a new copy of the two arches layer. Okay, and I'm just going to grab my move tool and grab it, bring the whole thing in, and close out of this. Now, we need to make sure this layer is in the right place. So let's go ahead and drag it up and put it at the top of everything. So there it is. I'm going to Control minus and zoom out, and I'm going to press Control T, holding Shift from the corner. This is important. And we're going to position this so that it fits in the phone. I want a little bit of this to stick out above the viewport of the phone, and I want the back half of the van to stick out. Now, it's kind of hard to tell, so I'm going to turn my opacity down for a minute so I can kind of see through this. All right, so there we go. It's still a little big because I want my van to all fit in there. And I want just the peak of that mountain to stick out right there, okay? All right, so I got a little bit of the van behind. I got a little peak sticking out. That's good, and I can turn this back up. And I'm going to hit my OK button. All right, so we want to do that. We want to have part of the band hanging out and the part of the rock hanging out. Whatever part you want is good. Now, we're going to click on the phone layer. And we're doing this just basically to make a selection so that we can see better. Now I'm going to turn this layer off for a minute. I'm going to grab my quick selection brush just because this is a nice easy rectangle that the brush can grab, but you could use a polygon lasso. I'm going to put this on plus, and I'm just going to just drag right over that. I'm going to get the O's and everything. See that selected really easily right there, right? Now, once I selected that, I'm going to come click back up on this other layer, okay? And this is going to be our inside the phone business. And I'm going to select a mask while I see the marching ants for that phone outline. So select a mask. See what that does? Now, if you don't see that, you might not be on onion skin. So be sure you're on onion skin. If you pull it back, see, we can see the whole picture. Then we can kind of see what's happening. And if we were to add a layer mask right now, here's what this would look like. It would all fit in there nicely. Now, we're going to have to make some edits, and we will in the next video, to add this mountain sticking out and add the back half of this vehicle sticking out. But for now, this looks good. I'm going to output this to a layer mask because layer masks are always editable. So none of this will be forever gone. If I change my mind and I want any of this picture back, I'll be able to get it back because we're using a layer mask. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And there we go. We've pretty much completed what we're going to complete for this video. We've done instructions 13 through 23. We're going to pick up on the next video with number 24. But this is what you should have so far. I'm going to press Control 0 here so we can look at the whole picture. And this is what you should have. Obviously, this here is going to be the inside of the phone. So I'm going to go ahead and name that inside phone just so I'm not confused by it. But otherwise, we are looking good. So we will continue in the next video.